I think a lot of people struggle talking to people that they want to have intimate conversations with. Like, I feel a lot of people second guess themselves when they're trying to have a one on one conversation or even a group conversation with people that they admire, or just really trying to improve their conversation skills with someone that they really like, though. And it's harder to talk to someone that you really like rather than just some random person having a conversation with you. It's like it's more easier to talk to somebody that is not really that meaningful. But when you have a meaningful conversation with somebody, it's more like more pressure to you. Like, I felt that at one point, but I feel like when you can learn how to have a real meaningful conversation with somebody, it goes a long way. Like, it really changes a conversation when you know how to, throw a little intimacy in a conversation. And I think that's important because that's where connection is being built. That's where the connection is being built when you can ask these open-ended questions to get someone to open up about their emotions. And I think that's the most important thing when improving your conversation skills with somebody that you truly like. It's like you gotta get them to be so comfortable to them for them to talk about their emotions. Like, that's when you learn that when you can get someone to talk about their emotions, it draws that person into the conversation, and that's what you want. You want someone to be drawn into the conversation, but nobody's going to be drawn into a conversation when they're not interested in what you're talking about. So most of the time you have to think, when you're having a conversation with somebody that you truly like, you don't want the conversation to just be based off of you. You want to really, that's when you really want to listen for real. That's when you really want to take notion of, I gotta really listen, because when you listen, that's when you'll catch certain things that you might not have caught if you were just talking. You know what I'm saying? You'll really be attuned with a person's body language, their tone of voice. That is so crucial when having a conversation, especially with somebody you like, because when you see facial expressions and you bring up a topic, especially when it's about how they're feeling, when you ask somebody, how are you feeling, whether it's about today or just in general, or whether it's about how your life is going right now, when you get a person to talk about their feelings, their emotions, their desires in life, it's gonna it's gonna either be they have a spark in their facial expression, like, oh, I've been waiting to talk about this, or they feel kind of sad of bringing up what they're going through. But then that's something you can really be pushing more towards, like, how can I open this person up to talk about those emotions, because I understand they want to talk about it, but they're just not in a comfortable space to express that with a person like me just yet. So when you think about having a meaningful conversation with somebody you like, be aware of, I gotta get this person to be very comfortable, and I gotta get this person to be very comfortable with me to talk about what they're going through in life. And it doesn't have to be bad. It can be something that's good in their life. You gotta remember, people want to talk about their lives. People want to talk about the good that's going on in their life. People really want to talk about sometimes the bad things that's going on in their lives. Nobody really is that strong enough to just be holding every emotion inside of them, especially when they have somebody that might just be you, that gives them like the comfortability to be like, you know what, I feel comfortable enough to express, something exciting that happened in my life, or something that's I'm going through right now, that's kind of, that might be a little bit depression, but he's not going to judge me. She's not going to judge me for the conversation we're about to have. So when you can get to that point of like, I want this conversation to be mainly focused on you. Like, I want it to be focused on you, but I know that I'm not finna just be giving an interview. I'm gonna follow up with things that I've experienced as well. But see, you have to, that's why I say you have to understand what type of conversation you're having, because not a lot of times that people are going to want to hear what you're going through if they're really trying to get something off their chest. So if they're really talking about something that they want to talk about, and then you say, oh yeah, that's so interesting, and that happened to me as well, and then you start going off of your story that happened to you, it's like, wait, I thought this was about me. So you have to understand when it's good to talk about yourself and follow up with an experience of your own, and or you have to know when, okay, let me just let this conversation be just based off of them. And that's when it comes with just listening. When you can really listen and be so attuned with what they're talking about, it'll make them be comfortable. It'll make them want to be drawn into this conversation. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be wanting to talk to you even more because you're talking about things that they want to talk about. And eventually, you guys are going to start having more conversations to where you can start bringing in your experiences and stories about yourself. But for the first couple of conversations you have with a loved one, somebody that you truly like, you want them to talk about themselves because one, it's gonna let you know who they are as a person. If you can get somebody to talk about like their childhood, their past, like something like very memorable that happened to them in their past childhood, these are things that people may not feel comfortable talking about, but deep down inside, they truly want to talk about things that happened in their childhood. They truly want to talk about, what happened that changed their life forever. If you can get somebody to talk about something that changed their life, whether it was when they were a child or whether it was when they were growing up as a teenager, people want to talk about past experiences. People want to talk about meaningful things that happen to them. So these are the things that you want to look for when talking to somebody that you truly like. Their desires in life, their past experiences. What is something very memorable in their life that they can remember? You know what I'm saying? These are some questions that you can ask. Like, you know what I'm saying? What's something very memorable that you remember in your past life that changed your life? You know what I'm saying? It might take them a while to think about it, but who's really asking them these type of questions? You know what I'm saying? Like, people are asking like just regular questions, like, or even when you go on a date, not too many people are even asking questions. Like, you might go on a date and you guys don't know what to talk about. It's just completely dry conversation, and then you're wondering why that person's not texting you, calling you back, because you didn't give that person anything meaningful to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So when you can find something meaningful to talk about with that person, they're just gonna keep being drawn into wanting to have a conversation with you. So these are things I feel are very important, especially with somebody you like. It's like when I can learn how to get out my way, because you got to remember, we want to talk about things too. We want to get something off our chest, but that's not the goal here. The goal is to make that person comfortable, because we're going to have time. If that person keeps coming back around, we're going to have time to have conversations where it's going back and forth, where I can talk about myself, you can talk about yourself. But the first little conversation that you have with that person, you want them to be talking majority about their self. And yeah, I think that's definitely a good way to have meaningful conversations, or just improving your conversation skills with somebody you truly like lock in on those key points of just knowing, first determining what the conversation is going to be about, because maybe they might not even want to talk about their emotions. But when you can get them to talk about their emotions, when they're comfortable enough to talk about their emotions and their feelings, then that's when you know you got them. I promise you. That's when you know you have somebody in a conversation. When they're open enough to express their feelings, their emotions, their desires that they have in life. What are their goals that they see for themselves in the future? What happened in the past? Some past experiences, some past traumas that really affected them, throughout their years in life. Because I guarantee you, you got to think about it. Think about your life. Everything who you are, everything that represents you as a person, who you are, most of it comes from your childhood, how you were raised as a child, your environment as a child. So a lot of times who we are as adults comes from who we were as a child. We might not think about it, but most of the times, like deep down in our subconscious, we are who we are because of our childhood experiences. So when you can get to talk about a person's childhood experiences, their emotions, all these things that get their feelings going, then I promise you they're going to keep coming back and wanting to have conversations. And that's what you want. And not even just with people that you really like, just being a person that everybody can talk to. Like, you know what I'm saying? You want to be that person that anybody can come up to you and have a conversation and leave that conversation feeling like, wow, I was very comfortable talking about things I probably never would have talked about to a random person. Why did he make me feel so comfortable? Maybe it was because you was asking the right questions. Maybe it was because you made a person feel vulnerable because you felt vulnerable in that conversation. If you can be vulnerable in a conversation, I promise you, it'll make another it'll make another person feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable to talk about vulnerable situations in their life, vulnerable emotions in their lives. So don't think being vulnerable is a weak trait. You know what I'm saying? It's actually a strong trait to have, especially as men, because men don't know how to compartmentalize being, this strong, dependent, macho man. And then when it's the right time to be vulnerable, they're okay with being vulnerable. And then after that, it's like, okay, I expressed a little vulnerability and I'm not going to let it get to me. You know what I'm saying? As a man, that's a hard thing to do because we're so taught to be just this strong, alpha male man when there's going to be a time where you need to be vulnerable, because that time of you being vulnerable just might be the time of like showing that person like, oh, I never seen this side of him, or oh, I never thought he had this side to him. Trust me, they're not going to be thinking that you're a weak person because you opened up a little bit. It ain't like you crying. It ain't like you just thinking the world is just, oh, like the world is just so against me. Don't be like that, but don't be afraid to be vulnerable and express a situation that you might be going through. You know what I'm saying? Don't be a little Debbie Downer and be like, all right, like this nigga's a little soft ass, because sometimes you can betray as that, but it's okay to give a little bit of vulnerability to, especially to a woman, to the woman that you truly like in certain situations. Y'all might be on a one-on-one conversation and she might be wanting to feel a little vulnerable to express something to you. You're gonna have to get on that same energy, that same frequency, because she's not gonna open up to you if you're on some just macho shit. She's not gonna want to do that. You gotta match that energy. You gotta match the level that she's trying to have the conversation with. And once you do that, I promise you, all these conversations that you have with people that you like is gonna be more easier, because you already know, okay, I figured out what we're about to talk about, because she just initiated what she wants to talk about through her body language, through her facial expressions. Now I'm just gonna keep asking a little bit questions about the things that she wants to talk about, and I'm still noticing like the body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice while we're talking, to see, is anything changed? Is anything dull now? Is anything high pitched? These are things that's going to help you figure out the next topic to talk about and not feel like, oh, I don't know what to talk about, and then everything is dry. So once you get that, man, you're going to be straight.